In this podcast episode, Dr. Robert Sapolsky discusses the impact of stress on the human body and brain. He emphasizes that while stress can have negative effects on various bodily functions, the most significant impact is on the brain, particularly in reducing empathy and tolerance. Dr. Sapolsky explains that stress narrows an individual's tunnel of concerns, making them less empathic and less willing to take someone else's perspective. He identifies the anterior cingulate cortex as the brain region responsible for feeling someone else's pain and emphasizes that stress disrupts the functioning of this region, leading to reduced empathy. He further explains that stress hormones play a role in this reduction of empathy and tolerance. When individuals are stressed, they become less generous and more likely to cheat in economic games. Their moral compass also becomes compromised, and their range of concern narrows down to people who are similar to them. Dr. Sapolsky delves into the neurological mechanisms behind stress and its impact on the brain. He discusses the role of the anterior cingulate cortex in interpreting pain and how stress hormones can disrupt its functioning. He also highlights that individuals suffering from major depression often have an overactive anterior cingulate cortex, leading to constant feelings of pain. The conversation then shifts to the concept of agency and volition in relation to stress. Dr. Sapolsky argues that there is no free will and that stress is imposed on individuals rather than being a choice. He explains that stress is a physiological response that evolved to save lives in short-term physical crises, but chronic psychosocial stress can have detrimental effects on health. The discussion moves on to the impact of socioeconomic status on stress and brain development. Dr. Sapolsky explains that individuals from low socioeconomic backgrounds experience higher levels of stress, which can affect brain growth and development. He highlights that stress hormones can pass through the placenta and have epigenetic effects on the fetus, leading to long-term consequences for brain maturation. Dr. Sapolsky emphasizes that socioeconomic status is a significant predictor of health outcomes and disease risks later in life. He also mentions that early life experiences can have multigenerational effects on brain development and function. The conversation then explores strategies for managing stress. Dr. Sapolsky suggests that having a sense of control, predictive information, and social support can help reduce stress. He also emphasizes the importance of finding stress management techniques that individuals enjoy and can incorporate into their daily lives. Dr. Sapolsky discusses the concept of habituation to pleasurable experiences and the constant pursuit of novelty. He explains that humans have a wide range of potential pleasures and motivations, but the downside is that we habituate to great experiences quickly, leading to a constant desire for more. He suggests that being mindful, thinking about others, and appreciating the present moment can help slow down the process of habituation. The conversation continues with a discussion on dopamine and its role in reward and anticipation. Dr. Sapolsky explains that dopamine is more about anticipation than reward and that it motivates individuals to pursue certain activities. He highlights that the anticipation and striving for something can often be more enjoyable than the actual reward. Dr. Sapolsky explains that stress is not inherently bad, as it can motivate us to take action and overcome challenges. However, when stress becomes chronic and overwhelming, it can have negative consequences. He discusses the importance of finding healthy ways to manage stress, such as exercise, social support, and relaxation techniques. One of the key points Dr. Sapolsky makes is that stress is not just about the external circumstances we face, but also about our perception and interpretation of those circumstances. He explains that our brains are wired to respond to uncertainty and unpredictability, and this can lead to increased levels of stress. He gives the example of pressing a lever and receiving a reward with 100% predictability versus only receiving the reward about half the time. The introduction of uncertainty in the latter scenario leads to a surge in dopamine, the brain's pleasure chemical. Dr. Sapolsky also discusses the concept of free will and its implications for our sense of agency and responsibility. He argues that free will is a myth and that our actions are determined by a combination of biology and environment. He suggests that recognizing the lack of free will can actually be liberating, as it allows us to let go of blame and judgment towards ourselves and others. He emphasizes the importance of creating a more humane society that focuses on understanding and addressing the root causes of behavior rather than punishment and retribution. The podcast also touches on the topic of meritocracy and the myth of the self-made man. Dr. Sapolsky argues that success is not solely determined by individual effort and merit, but also by factors such as genetics, environment, and luck. He challenges the notion that winners are solely responsible for their successes and losers are solely responsible for their failures. He suggests that a more equitable society would recognize the role of luck and privilege in determining outcomes and focus on creating opportunities for everyone to succeed. The conversation continues with Dr. Sapolsky explaining the physiological response to stress, known as the fight-or-flight response. He discusses how this response evolved to help humans deal with immediate threats but can become maladaptive in modern society, where stressors are often chronic and long-term. Dr. Sapolsky emphasizes the importance of understanding the difference between acute stress, which can be beneficial in certain situations, and chronic stress, which can have detrimental effects on health. He explains that chronic stress can lead to a range of physical and mental health issues, including cardiovascular disease, depression, and anxiety. The discussion then shifts to the concept of resilience and how individuals can develop resilience to better cope with stress. Dr. Sapolsky explains that resilience is not a fixed trait but can be cultivated through various strategies. He highlights the importance of social support, exercise, and finding meaning and purpose in life as key factors in building resilience. The conversation then delves into the role of genetics in stress response and resilience. Dr. Sapolsky explains that while genetics play a role in determining an individual's stress response, environmental factors and personal experiences also significantly influence how one responds to stress. He emphasizes the importance of recognizing that stress is not solely determined by genetics and that individuals have agency in managing their stress levels. The discussion then turns to the impact of chronic stress on the brain. Dr. Sapolsky explains that chronic stress can lead to structural and functional changes in the brain, particularly in the hippocampus and prefrontal cortex, which are involved in memory, decision-making, and emotional regulation. He discusses how chronic stress can impair these brain regions and contribute to cognitive decline and mental health disorders. Dr. Sapolsky also addresses the concept of free will and its implications for stress management. He argues that while individuals may not have complete control over their thoughts and actions, they still have agency in making choices and taking actions to reduce stress. He suggests small, incremental steps, such as practicing mindfulness, rejecting judgment, and performing random acts of kindness, as ways to exercise agency and manage stress. The conversation concludes with Dr. Sapolsky discussing his upcoming book, Determined: The Science of Life Without Free Will, in which he explores the concept of free will and its implications for human behavior. He encourages listeners to engage with his work and continue exploring the complexities of stress and human behavior. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to like and subscribe.